Welcome to this video on Spring. Today I'm going to give a brief introduction to what Spring is, the Spring framework, Spring Boot, and then I'll very quickly get into a demonstration of how you can get started with Spring and just how easy that is. Now, Spring is the world's most popular Java framework. Nearly 50% of enterprise applications run on Spring. That is significant. And the reason for this is Spring makes programming your applications much quicker, much easier, and much safer. And by safer, I mean more reliable, and very importantly, more secure. And it does this through being a framework. And a framework here means that Spring is providing the reusable building blocks that every application out there needs to function, but don't differentiate that application. So things like, how can an application handle web or REST requests? How can an application connect to a database? How can an application handle authentication, like authorization and other security pieces there? Things that you want to make sure are right following the best practices. So by using a framework like Spring, you're able to focus just on your business logic and not recreating all of those standard building blocks that the industry has already solved. Think of this like building a house. If you were going to build a house, you wouldn't go out and build your own saws, build your own hammer, forge your own nails, right? You wouldn't go out and make your own shingles and doors and refrigerators. You're going to procure those existing components so you can focus just on building the best house that meets your need. So today we're going to build a good example Spring application that is a web application, both for HTML as well as REST. And we'll go ahead and hook it up to a database to show that end-to-end connectivity. And then from there, we'll move on in other videos to show the CI/CD process, to show upgrading the Spring application, which is very important for existing applications, hooking it up to other cloud services, and then a very fun one we'll get into is hooking it up through Spring AI to different AI services so we can add AI capabilities to our Spring applications. So to get started, one thing, a great resource, spring.io is the main website, which will have all the different guides, getting started guides, documentation. But to get started, we're going to go to start.spring.io. And this will allow us to kickstart a new Spring application. We have just a couple options here. The first one, what do we want our build system to be? We are going to go with Gradle here. You could also choose Maven. We're sticking with Java, but there's a couple other JVM languages that you could also pick. We're going to go with the latest version, GA, of Spring Boot. And we will just call ours Acme, Acme Insurance, for example. We will package it as a jar because it is 2025 and use Java 21. So we've got a modern long-term support version of Java. From here, we can add our building blocks, our dependencies. So what we've just done will give us base Spring, but let's add the other pieces. So we want to handle web requests. So we will add Spring Web. We want to handle data. So we will add Spring Data using JPA, a very common API. We're going to add a simple database here. So instead of me having to run my own Postgres or MySQL database, we'll just run an embedded database for this example. We're going to add some management interfaces called actuators, which you'll see later for managing the application. And we're going to add Spring's developer tools just to make it easier. With that, we have our application. You can explore what it's going to create, but let's just go ahead and generate it. So this will download a zip file to my desktop. Let's go ahead and jump to the CLI and open up that. So we can go to downloads. You see that? We can unzip acme.zip. So here is my project. It's going to follow the standard structure and layout for Gradle and Java. And instead of looking at all of that in the command line, let's go ahead and open this in VS Code. So this will take a second as VS Code opens the application, builds it with Gradle. As I mentioned, it follows a standard convention. So we will have our build.gradle file, which we'll get into, which has all of our dependencies that we added. It will have our source main Java folder structure that you would expect, with just a tiny bit of code here to start our Spring Boot application. And what we can go ahead and do here now is let's just go ahead and run the application. This may take a second as Gradle may still be running. All right, we see that Spring has started up. It's going through its boot, starting the web server on port 8080. It's connected to the embedded H2 database, and it is up and running. So start its Acme application in 2 seconds. So let's go ahead and go back to the browser. And if we open a new tab and go to localhost 8080, we'll get an error. There is no web page there. We've not added a page. That is fine. That is expected. So let's go ahead and add our first endpoint here so that we can view this in a browser. We will go ahead and create a new class. We will call this my REST controller. And this will be a Spring REST controller. We want a method, public hello there. We can do public string hello there. And for now, we won't take any arguments and we will just return hello Spring. And this will be a GET mapping. So it'll be for a GET request. I don't need it to generate the whole thing, but thank you, VS Code. And we will make this right now just to the path. And we will return that. Clean up the import so it's not complaining. And let's go ahead and rerun this. If we come back here and refresh, now we have our page. This isn't JSON, it's just text, but we have Hello Spring. Now let's go ahead and add a web page. So an HTML page, and we will use ThymeLeaf for this. And this reminds me, I forgot to add ThymeLeaf to our build.gradle, and this is a good time to look at this. If you look in here, you'll see all our different dependencies that were added from start.spring.io. Actuators, JPA, web. We need one more, ThymeLeaf. And I don't believe it's supported with Gradle and VS Code to add it directly right now. So what I'm going to do is what I normally do, which is come here, type in the new thing, ThymeLeaf. We will look at the generated file, and we will just grab this one for ThymeLeaf. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we will add it here. And yes, we want it to do a new Gradle build. Okay, so we again want to create another class. So we'll do new Java file class, and we will do my web controller. And here, this will be an @controller from Spring. Again, we want a @get mapping. I'm going to let this autocomplete because it's quite convenient. Here we will say slash, let's call it /home. And this did a nice thing for me. It already gave me a request param string param. So we're going to change this to name. And we're going to give it a couple of properties. So we're going to give it a name of name. So this is the parameter it's passing in. Default value default value equals true, or default value will be world, sorry, we will give it that, and required will be false. All right, let's see if I got all that correct. Cool. And then string here, we will do hello, or we want to pass it the page here because this is no longer rest, so we will return a page called home. And the other thing we need to add here is we need our model. So we need model, and this will be Spring Framework model. So the model is in model view controller. We need the model which holds our data. That way we can do model dot add attribute. The attribute name will be, again, name. And then the parameter we're going to use is also name. So a little overloaded, but that's okay. And what we've done here is we said in this controller, when somebody does a request for the path home, we are going to inject the model. So Spring will take care of giving us the model. And then we are going to have a request parameter. So that's coming in the URL named name with the default value of world if they don't pass it. And we will pass this into name. You know what, I'm going to call this name param just so it's easier to understand. And then here we'll have name param. So that's getting passed along. And then here we are telling it, and this is how Spring works, we're telling it to go to the page called home. So this will be home.html. And this page doesn't exist, so we will create it under templates, new file. We will do home.html. And in here, I just need to put in a little bit of HTML, and I've got to admit, I do not have the muscle memory on HTML. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. Typical HTML page, I'm including this thime leaf namespace with the th header. And then in my body here, so we'll say welcome to Spring for the title. And then here we will say hello there, and then the name getting passed. So this name here will match the name here. So if we've configured all that correctly, we can go ahead and run this. And we will go back to Safari. We still have our existing page, and we can go to /home. And we get hello there world. Perfect. And we can also do the parameter name equals, let's say, Spring. Hello there, Spring. Or hello there, Derek. So this is both our REST endpoint as well as our web HTML endpoint using the thime leaf templating engine. So the next thing we want to do is hook this up to our database. As I mentioned earlier, we have an embedded H2 database. We can see that in the build.gradle. And we also have the Spring starter for Spring Data JPA. The way this works is we need to create two files here. So we're going to come back and we are going to create a new Java file. This will be a class. For the name of this, we will call it, I said Acme Insurance earlier, so we'll be an insurance company that has policies. So this will be the policy entity. So the entity being a database entity for ORM, or object relational mapping. So again, this will be an entity. My naming is not overly creative here. And we're going to need some stuff for our entity here. The first thing we're going to need is the ID, the key of this. So I'm going to create a private string, or private, let's do a long ID. And this will be our ID. And this will also be generated. So I want the database to go ahead and generate this for me. Generate it value. Helps if I get that right. And then let's do just private string name. This could be the name of the policy holder, and private string type. Yeah, just a couple of things for the example. For an entity, we need a constructor. So we will go ahead and use some generation here, just so I'm not typing all of this. So we will generate constructors. We will generate a no-arg constructor, which is required by JPA. And then for our own sanity, let's go ahead and generate one that takes string name, string type, and we'll do this dot name equals name, dot type equals type. The other thing here we're going to want is getters and setters. So we will generate getters and setters. We will do this for all of my fields. And then let's generate our toString. Okay. That is good for getting started. So we'll go ahead and save that. The second file we're going to want is the interface to this, the repository. This is what Spring will implement for us. So we can do a new Java file. This will be an interface, and we're going to call this our policy repo. And this policy repo is going to extend our CRUD repository, which is a type of repository, and we have to tell it what goes in this. So this will be a policy entity and the key. That's it. That's our entire interface to the database right there. So now we can come back, and I'm going to do a little shortcut here because this is a test application. I'm just going to go ahead and load an entity or load an entry in here. So we're going to do @bean, and this will be public command line runner load database. And in this case, I'm actually going to want to put in my policy repo, so I have access to that. And then for the command line runner, we're just returning a command line. So we will do return args and we want to log this. So let's create a logger first off. Logger, SLF for J, logger, log. We'll create our logger. What is this? Acme application.class. Good, we got our logger. So we can go ahead here and say, let's do a policy entity, new policy, or we'll call it my policy, equals new policy entity, and we'll give it a name, Derek, and a type will be auto. And then we'll do log.info, writing new policy. And I believe this is the syntax for my policy. So then we can do repo, and this is where we'll do save, and we'll go ahead and save my policy. So this will write that to the database, which in this case is an H2 database. And again, Spring is taking care of all of that code, all of that interfacing, and actually making that connection to the database, which is really nice. And then we want to go ahead and fetch this. So we can then, just as a quick test, you obviously wouldn't do this usually, but you can do find all, and then for each. So this will be for each policy. And what do we want to do for each policy? We want to go ahead and do log.info, and we can say found policy. Probably should not do that in the quotes. Policy. Boom. All right, let's make sure we've got all of our semicolons. That looks good. So let's go ahead and run this again and just watch the logs to make sure this is getting written to our database. So again, this is spinning up an H2 database. It is connecting to it. This is just an in-memory database. It has the connection pool. And then if we look at our logs, we will see writing new policy. So this is writing it to the database. It has no ID because that's being generated. And then it reads it back, and we found one policy for me, and it is generated ID number 1. Awesome. Let's go ahead and display that. So let's go ahead and put this back on REST, since we never really did REST here. Well, we never really did kind of JSON here. We'll do a simple one to say, hey, let's just get a policy. And we're going to keep this really simple and just say get policy. We're no longer return string. We are going to return a policy entity. Again, just for this example, we might not want to pass our entity all the way to our presentation layer. And then we're going to need the repo. So we will do at autowired to have Spring inject it. And this will be a policy repository repo. We will keep it just protected or package protected. And we will say repo dot find by ID. And in this case, we just want to find the first one. So we'll do long dot value of 1. And we can just return this. And that's just saying that it may be null. We should be checking that, but we will call get on it anyways. So let's go ahead and fire this up. It's up and running. Let's go back to our browser, and we can make sure that our REST controller is still running. And then let's say /policy. And there we go. I've got a nice little pretty print on this, but we see our one policy. So we've set up our REST interface. We've set up a web interface with a templating engine, TimeLeaf, and we've connected this all to a database. A couple behind the scenes comments here. I'm using Visual Studio Code, VS Code, downloaded it from their website, just the latest version. A couple of key plugins I have Spring, and this is the Spring Boot extension pack, which will give you Spring Boot, Initializr, Spring Boot support. I also have the Java extension pack, Java language support. Should be the extension pack if I am not mistaken. Where did it go? Extension pack for Java. This gives you Java support, debugger, and then I have Gradle. Those are the big ones that I've been using here. GitHub is another very useful one, as you start to integrate with Git for CI/CD. And then for language support, I use SDKman. There we go, SDK current. shows me Gradle, Java, and I do have Maven for my occasional Maven. So highly recommend SDKman for installing your developer tools, Java, Gradle, Maven. And then if VS Code is what you're using, that is a great option. So I will go ahead and leave you there. In future videos, I want to come back and show upgrading older Spring projects because they're not all greenfield and new. I want to come back and show how I would hook this up with Git and CI for building it, and then really want to get back and get into some more AI concepts. Thank you.